He walked into the bank wearing jeans, stained with dirt and boots caked with mud. He was only 24 years old, with messy hair and hands hardened by heavy labor. He looked exactly like what he was, a rural farmer who had just come in from the fields. And her. She was 28, wearing a designer suit, manicured nails, and that air of superiority that people in small positions of power sometimes acquire. Assistant bank manager, important enough to have her own office, important enough to decide who deserved respect and who didn't. She humiliated him in front of everyone, made him feel small, dirty, unworthy. He didn't react. He simply smiled that calm smile, turned around, and walked out. What she did not know, that little farmer of 24 had just sold his harvest for $12 million, and he was there to deposit the check and discuss investments. What happened over the next 48 hours completely destroyed her career. And the lesson she learned, she would never forget it. If you love stories where arrogant people learn the worst possible way not to judge by appearances, smash that like now. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications and comment. Never underestimate anyone. If you've ever seen someone judged unfairly, now get ready, because what comes next will give you that deep, satisfying smile of justice served. The small town of Windridge, Texas, had a population of 6,000 people, 2 main streets forming an imperfect T in the town center, and that timeless quality of places where generations of the same family are born, grow up, grow old, and die without ever living more than 10 kilometers from where they were born. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where your business was everyone's business, where your reputation was built over decades through small, consistent actions, not grand gestures. And in Windridge's social hierarchy, farmers sat somewhere in the middle, respected for the work they did, certainly, but not exactly at the top of the social ladder. That position was reserved for successful business owners, professionals like doctors and lawyers, and people who worked in offices instead of fields. Jake Morrison was 24 years old and technically fit into the category of farmer, although the story was more complicated than that. He had grown up on the Morrison farm, a 400-hectare property his family had owned for 4 generations. His great-grandfather had bought the land in 1920, when it was practically being given away because no one believed cotton would grow there. They proved everyone wrong through brutal labor and sheer stubbornness. His grandfather expanded the operation. His father modernized it. And Jake was about to turn it into something no one in 4 generations of Morrisons had managed, a genuinely profitable enterprise. But to fully understand what happened that day at the bank, you need to understand Jake Morrison, who he was, where he came from, and why he seemed so out of place even in the town where he was born and raised. Jake had been an odd child in Windridge. Quiet, introspective, more interested in books than sports. While other boys played football or went hunting with their fathers on weekends, Jake was reading about agricultural techniques, commodity markets, and biotechnology applied to crops. He was brilliant, obviously so to anyone who paid attention. He earned perfect grades without really trying, scored a 1580 on the SAT. He could have gone to any university he wanted, probably on a full scholarship, and he wanted to go. MIT was his dream, to study agricultural engineering, maybe biotechnology, to combine his analytical mind with his passion for agriculture in a way that could change entire industries. But then, 2 months before high school graduation, his father, Robert Morrison, suffered a massive heart attack while operating a tractor in the South Field. He died before the ambulance arrived. Robert was only 47. He left behind his wife, Margaret, and 3 children, Jake, 17, his sister Sarah, 15, and his youngest brother Tommy, 12. And he left behind a farm that, to be honest, was financially struggling. Not because Robert was a bad farmer, he was excellent, but because small-scale agriculture was becoming less and less viable. Massive corporations with thousands of hectares could operate with economies of scale that family farms simply couldn't compete with. Robert had been fighting to stay afloat before he died. Now, with him gone, the farm was on the brink of total collapse. Jake had a choice to make. Go to MIT as planned, chase his dreams, let his mother figure out how to sell the farm and start over somewhere else. Or stay, take over the farm, try to make it work somehow, sacrifice his own plans to take care of his family. It wasn't really a choice for Jake. He stayed. He sent a polite email to MIT declining admission. Enrolled in the local community college, he could take a few classes at night, keep his mind sharp, but most of his time would be spent on the farm. And at 17, still months away from being legally an adult, Jake Morrison became a full-time farmer. The first years were brutal. Jake didn't really know what he was doing. He understood agriculture theoretically from all his studying, but theory and practice are very different things when you're out in the field at 5 in the morning, fixing broken irrigation or trying to figure out why an entire section of cotton is dying. He made mistakes. Many mistakes. He planted the wrong crop in the wrong soil, miscalculated fertilizer needs, and burned 3 hectares of land. Waited too long to harvest and lost 10% of the crop to unexpected rain. Every mistake cost money they didn't have. Every mistake pushed the farm closer to bankruptcy. His mother, Margaret, did what she could. She took a job at the local library, bringing in a small but steady income. Sarah, when she was old enough, worked part-time at the pharmacy. Tommy helped on the farm after school. But mostly, the farm's survival rested on Jake's shoulders, and he carried that weight like a cross. There were nights when he sat alone on the porch after everyone else had gone to sleep, staring out at the dark fields, running numbers in an old notebook, revenue versus expenses, debt versus credit. The numbers never worked out the way they needed to. They were always just surviving, never thriving, always one bad month away from losing everything. But Jake was stubborn as his great-grandfather, who refused to believe cotton wouldn't grow on that worthless land. And slowly, painfully, Jake learned. He learned by doing, by failing, by adjusting. He learned by talking to older farmers with decades of experience who, once they realized he truly wanted to learn, shared their knowledge generously. He learned by reading every agricultural journal, every market analysis he could get his hands on. And slowly, very slowly, he began to make the farm work. Not prosper yet, but work, survive, keep their heads above water. When Jake was 21, he had an idea, a risky idea, potentially stupid, but also potentially revolutionary for their operation. Everyone in the area grew cotton. It was the traditional crop, what Texas did, what generations of farmers had done. But the cotton market was volatile, with prices controlled by global forces completely outside the control of a small farmer. And everyone competing in the same market meant margins were squeezed down to almost nothing. What if, Jake thought, they grew something different, something with growing demand but limited supply? He researched obsessively, read about market trends, shifts in consumer preferences, new uses for old crops, and he discovered something interesting: pecans. Texas had historically been a major pecan producer, but production had declined in recent decades because it wasn't as immediately profitable as other crops. But demand was rising, especially for organic pecans, driven by the growing health food market. And more importantly, establishing a pecan orchard had a high barrier to entry. It took 7 to 10 years before the trees produced significantly. Most farmers didn't have the patience or capital to wait that long, which meant supply was limited, and limited supply with rising demand means high prices. Jake presented the idea to his mother. "You want to rip out our cotton," Margaret said slowly, "and plant trees that won't produce anything for 7 years?" "Yes," Jake said. Not all of it, only half. We keep cotton on the other half for steady income, but we convert half to pecans, organic varieties, premium market. And how do we survive for 7 years until the trees produce? We tighten our belts even more, Jake admitted. I take out a loan against the land to finance the seedlings and irrigation. We work harder. But in 7 years, when they start producing, Mum, the numbers are incredible. We could make in one pecan harvest what would take 5 years with cotton. Margaret looked at her son, only 21, but already looking older, the weight of responsibility having aged him prematurely. Are you sure about this? No, Jake said honestly. It's a gamble, but staying as we are is a gamble too, one I'm pretty sure we'll eventually lose. At least this is a gamble with a real chance of winning. Margaret thought for a long time. Then she said, "Your father always said the Morrisons don't quit. We do it." And so Jake, at 21 years old, took a risk that would have made seasoned farmers shake their heads in disbelief. He took out a $250,000 loan from the local bank, First National Bank of Windridge, using the land as collateral. He used the money to buy thousands of premium pecan saplings, install a sophisticated irrigation system, and properly prepare the soil. He converted 200 hectares of cotton fields into a budding pecan orchard, and that decision would change everything. And then he waited. 7 years is a very long time when you're young and impatient. 7 years is an eternity when you're drowning in debt and every single month is a fight to make payments. Jake worked harder than ever. He kept the remaining 200 hectares in cotton, squeezing every possible cent of profit out of them. He took extra jobs whenever he could, repairing equipment for other farmers, doing agricultural consulting with the knowledge he had accumulated. He lived extremely frugally. He drove a 20-year-old pickup truck, wore clothes until they literally fell apart, and rarely ate out or spent money on anything non-essential. And he cared for those pecan trees as if they were his children. He monitored every single one, adjusted irrigation with precision, treated any sign of disease or pests immediately, read everything he could about optimal orchard management, and the trees grew, slowly but steadily. Year 1, 2, 3, nothing but growing trees. Year 4, some blossoms but no real production. Year 5, the first very small yield, maybe 2% of their eventual potential, not enough to sell, but proof of concept. The trees were healthy, they were developing correctly. Year 6, production improved to maybe 10% of full potential. Jake sold a small amount to a specialty market and made a few $1,000s. It barely covered orchard maintenance costs, but it was something. And then came year 7. The trees, now fully mature, exploded with production. That fall's harvest exceeded even Jake's most optimistic projections. The trees produced abundantly, and because he had cared for them so meticulously, because he had chosen premium varieties, because he had maintained strict organic standards, the quality was exceptional. He sold through a broker who specialized in the premium organic market, and the price was 3 times what cotton would have generated on the same land. When everything was tallied, that first major harvest grossed nearly $15 million. After operating costs, debt repayment, taxes, and setting aside capital for the next season, Jake was left with approximately $12 million. At 24 years old, 7 years after taking over a failing farm, Jake Morrison had turned a desperate gamble into extraordinary success. He was, overnight, a millionaire. A multi-millionaire, in fact. But if you saw him on the street, you'd never know it. He still drove the same old pickup truck, still wore the same worn-out work clothes, still woke up at 5 in the morning to work the fields, still lived in the same modest house where he had grown up. Because for Jake, money was not about showing off or status. It was about security. It was about knowing his mother would never have to worry about bills again. It was about being able to send Sarah and Tommy to any university they wanted. It was about having built something durable, something that would last. And also, honestly, he simply didn't care about material things. He never had. So that Tuesday morning in October, 1 week after closing the sale of his harvest, Jake Morrison walked into the First National Bank of Windridge looking exactly the way he always did, like a farmer who had just come in from the fields. His boots had dried mud on them because he had checked the irrigation system that morning. His jeans were stained with dirt. His flannel shirt had seen better days. His hair was a bit long, a bit messy, because he never made time for haircuts. He was 24 years old, but the sun-weathered skin from years working under the Texas sun made him look older. He carried an old-school backpack he'd been using since high school. Inside it, an equally old laptop and envelopes containing important financial documents. He needed to do several things at the bank. Deposit the $12 million check, obviously, but also discuss setting up proper investment accounts, possibly trusts for his siblings, fully pay off the farm's mortgage, and handle several other financial matters that arise when someone suddenly has significant resources. He had called the week before, trying to schedule an appointment with the bank manager. He left a message that was never returned. Tried again. Same thing. So he decided to just show up. It was a small town, a small bank. How busy could they really be? He walked through the glass doors into the main lobby at 9:15 a.m. The bank had been open for 15 minutes. There were maybe 6 customers inside, some at the tellers, 2 waiting in the small seating area, 1 speaking with a loan officer through a glass partition. Jake approached the receptionist, a young woman he didn't recognize. She must have been new. Turnover was high in those positions. "Good morning," he said politely. "I need to speak with the manager about opening some accounts and handling a few transactions." The receptionist looked at him, her eyes moving quickly from his dirty boots to his stained jeans to his faded shirt. Her expression shifted subtly. Not exactly rude, but definitely less enthusiastic than it had been when she greeted the previous customer who was wearing a business suit. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," Jake admitted. "I tried calling to schedule one, but I didn't get a call back. It's fairly urgent, so I thought I'd stop by." "The manager is very busy today," she said, not checking a calendar or asking the manager, just assuming that someone who looked like Jake didn't deserve the manager's time. "You can try coming back Thursday. Call ahead to schedule a proper appointment." "It's really important," Jake insisted gently. "It won't take long, but it needs to be handled soon." "More, as I said," the receptionist repeated, her voice gaining that edge of irritation people in small positions of power develop when they feel their authority is being questioned. "The manager is busy. If you don't have an appointment, you need to make one. Thursday is the earliest available." Jake was about to argue further when a voice cut in from behind him. "Is there a problem here?" He turned. A woman was standing there, 28 or so, wearing a sharply tailored business suit that probably cost more than Jake's pickup truck. Perfectly styled blonde hair. Makeup applied with professional precision. A name badge on her lapel read, Amanda Peterson. Assistant manager Amanda had worked at First National for 4 years, working her way up from teller to assistant manager through a combination of real competence and skillful office politics. She was ambitious, efficient, and also, though she would never openly admit it, deeply biased about who belonged in serious financial institutions and who didn't. "This gentleman is insisting on seeing the manager without an appointment," the receptionist explained. "I told him he needs to schedule one, but he's being difficult." "I'm not being difficult," Jake said calmly. "I just need to speak with someone about some important transactions. I tried calling several times to make an appointment, but no one returned my call." Amanda assessed him with a single, quick glance. She saw exactly what she expected to see. Another small-town farmer, probably wanting to discuss a small loan or maybe equipment refinancing. The kind of client who took up time but didn't generate much profit for the bank. The kind of client she felt shouldn't be wasting the manager's time when there were real clients, serious clients, who needed attention. "Mr. she asked, not offering a handshake. "Morrison," Jake supplied. "Jake Morrison." "Mr. Morrison," Amanda said, her voice professional but cold. "I understand that you feel your issue is important, but First National Bank has protocols. We can't simply accept walk-ins who interrupt the manager's schedule. You need to make a proper appointment." "I understand that," Jake said, maintaining patience even as irritation began to build. "But as I said, I tried calling several times. No one returned my call." "Perhaps you called the wrong number," Amanda suggested with mild condescension. "Or perhaps you didn't leave adequate contact information. Either way, it's not our responsibility to track you down. Our policy is clear. Significant transactions require an appointment. For your convenience," she added with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We can schedule you for Thursday at 2 p.m. Does that work for your schedule?" There was something in her tone, the specific way she said "your schedule," as if a farmer's schedule couldn't possibly be as important as a real client's, that finally irritated Jake. "Look," he said, his voice still calm but firmer now, "I understand that I look like I just came in from the field. That's because I did. But I have serious, urgent transactions to conduct, and I would appreciate speaking with someone about them today." "What kind of transactions?" Amanda asked, skepticism clear in her voice. Jake hesitated. He didn't want to announce his business in a bank lobby full of people, but it seemed he'd have to give some detail to be taken seriously. "I need to deposit a substantial check," he said quietly, "and discuss investment options for the funds." "How substantial?" Amanda asked, crossing her arms. "Because if you're talking about a few $1,000s, any teller can process a deposit, and you can discuss investments at your scheduled appointment on Thursday." Jake took a deep breath. $12 million. The silence that followed was brief, but total. Everyone in the lobby heard it. Everyone stopped what they were doing for a second and turned to look. Then someone laughed. It was one of the customers, a middle-aged man Jake didn't recognize. And then Amanda laughed too. Not a big laugh, but a small, condescending one, the kind of laugh you give when a child tells an obvious lie. $12 million, she repeated, making sure to sound amused. "You're saying you have a $12 million check?" "Yes," Jake said, feeling his face heat with embarrassment and rising anger. "Right," Amanda said, still smiling, her eyes cold. "Mr. Morrison, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you're confused about a few zeros. Perhaps you mean 12,000 or maybe 100,000 if you had a very good season?" "No," Jake said through clenched teeth. 12 million. 2 million. Amanda sighed, the amusement gone now, replaced by genuine irritation. "Mr. Morrison, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't appreciate having my time wasted. You clearly do not have a $12 million check. Look at you." She gestured at his clothes. "You're dressed like a homeless man. You drive—" She glanced through the windows toward the parking lot where Jake's old pickup sat, "a vehicle that should have been scrapped 10 years ago, and you expect me to believe that someone in your position has $12 million? Jake felt something break inside him, not explosive anger, but something colder, calmer, more dangerous. "My position," he said quietly, "is owner of a 400-hectare farm that has just completed the most profitable harvest in my family's history. My position is someone who worked for 7 years preparing for this moment. And my position, Ms. Peterson, is that of a customer of this bank for 7 years. Someone who has paid every loan on time, and someone who came here today expecting to be treated with basic respect, not with contempt because my clothes have dirt on them." If you really had $12 million, Amanda snapped, her voice rising now, professionalism slipping as frustration took over, you wouldn't be wearing Goodwill clothes and driving scrap metal. People with real money present themselves properly. They understand that appearance matters, that there is a code of conduct when doing serious business. The fact that you showed up here looking like, well, frankly, looking like a bum, tells me everything I need to know about the credibility of your claims. So you're refusing to serve me? Jake said. Not a question, but a statement. I'm saying, Amanda replied, her voice now loud enough that the entire bank was unmistakably listening, that this bank is for serious clients, people who understand decorum, people who have a real need for our services. Not for, she hesitated, searching for the right word, not for people who walk in off the street, making ridiculous claims in an attempt to, what? Get attention? Feel important for a moment? She pointed toward the door. My suggestion, Mr. Morrison, is that you go home, clean yourself up, and perhaps try one of those farmers' credit unions where your demands would be more appropriate for their clientele. First National Bank of Windridge serves a more refined clientele, and we expect our customers to present themselves accordingly. The silence in the bank was now absolute. Everyone was watching. Some were embarrassed, some shocked, some, Jake could see, secretly agreeing with Amanda. After all, he looked completely out of place in the beautiful bank with its marble floors, high ceilings, and atmosphere of financial importance. Jake looked at Amanda for a long moment. He saw everything he needed to see: the arrogance, the prejudice, the complete inability to imagine that maybe, just maybe, she had made a colossal error in judgment. Understood, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked out of the bank, head held high, back straight, but inside he was furious, humiliated and determined. As he drove away, he was already planning his next move, and Amanda Peterson had no idea of the storm she had just set in motion. 20 minutes after leaving First National Bank, Jake was sitting in a small cafe on Main Street, laptop open on the table, phone in his hand. His first call was to Richard Chen, the Morrison family's longtime accountant, who had managed their simple finances for years, but was now about to have much more interesting work. Richard, Jake said when the accountant answered, I need your help. I need names of private wealth managers, the best ones you know. I want the first meeting scheduled today if possible, tomorrow at the latest. Today, Richard repeated, surprised. Jake, top-tier wealth managers don't exactly take last-minute meetings. They will for $12 million in new assets, Jake interrupted. And Richard, make sure they understand that I want everything, and I mean everything, moved out of First National Bank. I don't want a single cent of the Morrison family's money in that institution after the end of this week. There was a pause on the other end of the line. What happened? I was judged by my boots, Jake said simply. And now I'm going to teach a lesson about assumptions. His second call was to David Kirkland, Managing Director of Texas Heritage Wealth Management, one of the most respected wealth management firms in the state. They weren't based in Windridge, their main office was in Houston, but Jake knew they had representatives in Dallas, just 90 minutes away. Mr. Kirkland, Jake said when he was transferred through 2 layers of assistants, my name is Jake Morrison. I have approximately $12 million that need to be invested intelligently, and my accountant Richard Chen told me your firm would be the ideal choice. Is there any possibility of a meeting this afternoon? There was murmuring on the other end as Kirkland clearly checked with someone. Mr. Morrison, I can have our senior wealth advisor, Michael Torres, at your location tomorrow at 10 a.m. Would that be acceptable? Perfect, Jake said. And Mr. Kirkland, I'm also interested in discussing private banking services. I currently have a relationship with a local bank that is failing to meet my needs. I understand, Kirkland said, and Jake could hear the smile in the man's voice. He had clearly dealt with affluent clients leaving smaller banks before. Michael can absolutely discuss our private banking options as well. It will be a productive meeting. Jake's third call was to his attorney, Samuel Green, a 60-year-old man who had handled the Morrison family's legal work for decades, mostly simple things like wills and the occasional property dispute. "Sam," Jake said, "I need you to prepare documents to establish trust funds. One for my mother, one for Sarah, one for Tommy. The basic structure is that each trust is irrevocable. The funds cannot be touched by creditors or future spouses, and distributions are managed by professional trustees based on guidelines I'll provide. How much do you need to get started?" "Jake," Sam said slowly, "trust funds are serious business. Are we talking about significant assets?" "Yes." "How significant?" $2 million for each trust to start," Jake said. "Possibly more later." Sam let out a low whistle. "That pecan harvest was good." "Better than good," Jake confirmed. "So you can do the trusts?" "I can," Sam said. "It'll take a few days to prepare the documents properly, but yes, I'll start today." "Thank you," Jake said. "And Sam? None of this is public yet. I'd prefer to keep it discreet." "Attorney-client privilege," Sam assured him. "No one will hear it from me." But of course, in a town the size of Windridge, secrets didn't stay secret for long. By the time Jake finished his coffee and returned to the farm, rumors were already circulating. Because those bank customers, the 6 people who had witnessed the confrontation between Jake and Amanda, had left and started telling others. "You won't believe what happened at First National today. That young Morrison kid, the farmer, he walked in claiming he had $12 million. Amanda Peterson threw him out, said he looked like a bum." The stories spread, mutating with each retelling as stories do. Some details were exaggerated, others minimized, but the core remained the same. Jake Morrison had made a bold claim about money, and Amanda Peterson had publicly humiliated him and sent him away. Reactions in Windridge were mixed. Some, especially older farmers who knew the Morrison family, were outraged on Jake's behalf. "Amanda's always been too proud for her own good," a retired farmer said to a group of friends at the diner, "judging that boy by his clothes. Shameful." But others were more skeptical. "$12 million?" They laughed. "Impossible. No 400-hectare family farm clears $12 million in a single season. The kid was clearly exaggerating or lying outright." Amanda was right to call his bluff. As for Amanda Peterson herself, when rumors about her interaction with Jake began circulating back to her, and they did quickly, she was completely unconcerned. She told her version of the story to co-workers at the bank during lunch break. "He literally walked in looking like he'd slept in a barn," she said, laughing to 2 colleagues. "Dirty, unkempt, driving a vehicle that should have been in a junkyard. And he expects me to believe he has $12 million. Please, you think he was trying to, what, scam the bank?" one co-worker asked. "I don't know what he was trying," Amanda said, "but it wasn't legitimate. No one with real resources presents themselves like that. It's insulting to my intelligence to think I wouldn't see through it." "What if he was telling the truth?" the other co-worker asked hesitantly. Amanda laughed. "Then he'll come back, schedule a proper appointment, and conduct business like a normal person. But that's not going to happen because he obviously doesn't have $12 million. Trust me." Amanda's confidence was not shaken in the slightest. Why would it be? She had 4 years of banking experience. She knew how wealthy people behaved, how they presented themselves. And Jake Morrison didn't fit that profile in any way whatsoever. She was right to send him away. Right to protect the manager's time from being wasted on ridiculous walk-ins. She had done exactly what her position required. She was so confident of that fact that when she went home that night, she didn't think about Jake Morrison again. It was just another day, just another difficult customer handled appropriately. She had dinner, watched television, and went to bed without a worry in the world. Meanwhile, Jake spent that night on his farm, on the porch where he often sat when he needed to think, making plans. Plans for investments, plans for his family's future. And yes, he admitted to himself, plans for how to deal with First National Bank, and with Amanda Peterson in particular. The next morning, Wednesday, Michael Torres from Texas Heritage Wealth Management arrived at the Morrison farm exactly at 10 o'clock, driving a black Mercedes sedan, dressed in a sharp but understated suit. He greeted Jake with a firm handshake and a genuine smile, showing no trace of judgment about Jake's work clothes or the modest surroundings. "Mr. Morrison," Michael said, "it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for considering our firm for your wealth management needs." "Call me Jake," Jake replied, guiding Michael into the house. "Would you like some coffee? It's what we've got." "Coffee would be great." They sat at the kitchen table. Margaret had taken Sarah and Tommy into town, giving Jake privacy for the meeting, and Jake spread out the documents. A bank statement showing the current balance in the Morrison farm account at First National, $12,453,722. Confirmation of the deposit of the check Jake had made through the mobile banking app after leaving the bank the previous day, since he apparently wasn't a serious enough client to deposit it in person. Documents from the crop sale showing the completed transaction. Michael reviewed everything carefully, his professional expression never wavering, though Jake noticed his eyebrows rise slightly at the figures. "Impressive," Michael said finally. "That pecan harvest was clearly exceptional. So 7 years of work led up to it," Jake said. "And now I need to be smart about what I do with the money." "Absolutely. So let's talk about goals. What do you want this money to do for you?" For the next hour, they went over Jake's financial situation, his goals, and his risk tolerance. Jake was clear about his priorities. "First, security for my family. My mother should never have to work again if she doesn't want to. My siblings should be able to attend any college they want without student debt. Second, reinvest in the farm. I want to expand the pecan operation, maybe acquire additional land. Third, build long-term wealth through diversified investments." "All reasonable," Michael said, "and completely achievable with your resources. Here's what I would recommend." He outlined a strategy. $4 million in conservative liquid investments, bonds, index funds, some money market, for security and income. $2 million in trust funds for the family, as Jake had already discussed with Sam. $3 million reinvested into the agricultural operation, expansion, new equipment, possibly purchasing adjacent property if it became available. $3 million in more aggressive growth investments, stocks, some private equity, perhaps some commercial real estate. That leaves you with roughly $500,000 in liquid reserves, Michael concluded. I strongly recommend keeping that amount in an easily accessible account for emergencies or opportunities. Does that sound reasonable? Very, Jake agreed. And about banking, Michael asked. May I ask why you want to move away from First National? They're a decent community bank. Let's just say customer service left something to be desired, Jake replied dryly. I understand. Well, we work with several private banks. I can recommend 3 based on your needs. All of them would be happy to set up your accounts, and all offer services far superior to traditional retail banks. He spread out brochures. Jake reviewed the options. This one, he said, pointing, Texas Premier Private Banking. Office in Dallas? Yes, and they're excellent for clients with your asset profile. I can make an introduction today if you'd like. Please do. Michael made the call on the spot, spoke briefly with someone at Texas Premier, then hung up and smiled. They can meet with you Friday at 2 p.m. at their Dallas office. Set up all accounts, transfer funds from First National, everything you need. Perfect, Jake said. They spent another 30 minutes finalizing details. Then Michael took his leave. promising to send all documentation for review by the end of the day. "It'll be a pleasure working with you, Jake," Michael said sincerely as they shook hands on the porch. "Not every day we meet someone who's built success like this at such a young age. You should be proud of what you've accomplished." After Michael left, Jake sat on the porch for a while, just thinking. He didn't feel particularly proud. Mostly, he felt relief that 7 years of brutal effort were finally paying off. But he was satisfied. The pieces were coming together. On Thursday afternoon, Sam Green called. "The trust documents are ready for review. Can you come by the office?" Jake did. He spent 2 hours reviewing the legal language, making minor adjustments, and finally signing. "That establishes the trusts," Sam explained. "Now you just need to fund them. Once the funds are transferred, your siblings and your mother will have financial security regardless of anything that happens to you or the farm operation." "How long to transfer the funds?" Jake asked. "Once you have liquidity in the new bank account, you can do wire transfers. 2 business days to process." "So around Tuesday next week," Jake calculated. "Correct." Friday morning, Jake put on his best clothes, which meant clean jeans with no stains, a button-down shirt he had carefully ironed, he was terrible at ironing, and the newest boots he owned. Still not a business suit, but presentable. He drove the 90 minutes to Dallas, found the Texas Premier Private Banking office in a sleek downtown high-rise, and was greeted like a client with $12 million. "Mr. Morrison, welcome." The relationship manager, an impeccably dressed woman in her early 40s named Catherine Reeves, practically hurried over to greet him as he stepped out of the elevator. "It's a pleasure to have you here. Please, this way." She guided him into a private conference room with a view of the Dallas skyline. Coffee, water, and pastries were offered. 2 other team members joined them, a senior investment specialist and the bank's legal advisor. For the next 3 hours, they set everything up: a new checking account, a high-yield savings account, an investment account tied to the portfolio Michael Torres would manage, online credentials, debit cards, checkbooks, everything Jake would need. "And the transfer of your funds from First National?" Catherine asked. "We can initiate that today if you have the account information." "Let's do it," Jake said. "Everything except $1,000. Leave $1,000 in the old account. I'll need it for something." Catherine didn't ask what. Discretion was part of private banking service. "Certainly, we'll initiate the wire transfer now. It should process by Monday." They signed the paperwork. Catherine personally walked Jake to his car when they finished. "Mr. Morrison, Jake," she said warmly, "if you ever need anything, you have my personal cell number. Call any time. That's what we do for our clients." Jake thanked her and drove home, a sense of satisfaction growing inside him. Everything really was falling into place. Now came the part he'd been waiting for. Monday. In Windridge, the weekend passed normally for most people. For Amanda Peterson, it was a normal weekend as well. Brunch with friends on Saturday, shopping, a lazy Sunday. She didn't think about Jake Morrison even once. Why would she? On Monday morning, Amanda arrived at First National Bank at 8:45, 15 minutes before it officially opened. She liked arriving early, reviewing the day's schedule, enjoying her Starbucks coffee in peace before customers started coming in. She was in her office, checking emails, when Robert Hendricks, the bank's senior manager, knocked and walked in without waiting for a response. "Amanda, we need to talk," he said, and there was something in his tone, urgency mixed with something like panic, that immediately caught her attention. "What happened?" "You handle the Morrison account, right? Morrison Farm?" Yes, technically that account is under my supervision," Amanda said. "Why?" "Because $12 million just left that account," Robert said, his voice tense. "A wire transfer to Texas Premier Private Banking, processed at 8:30 this morning." And I need to know if you were aware this was coming. Amanda felt her stomach drop. 12 million. 12.4 million, Robert corrected, leaving a balance of just $1,000. Amanda, that was one of the 5 largest deposits in the entire bank. How did we lose this account? I didn't know they had that much, Amanda said weakly. I don't understand. The Morrison account was it was a small farm operation. They usually had maybe 30,000 in the account, a small loan they paid off. They deposited 12 million last Tuesday, Robert said, looking at his computer screen. Through the mobile app, crop sale proceeds. And now, 3 business days later, they moved everything. What the hell happened, Amanda? And then Amanda remembered. Last Tuesday, Jake Morrison walking into the bank, claiming he had $12 million, her laughing at him, sending him away, telling him to go to a credit union, and he had actually had $12 million, and she had thrown him out. Oh no, she whispered. Oh no, no, no. What did you do? Robert demanded. There was a misunderstanding, Amanda said, panic rising in her chest. Jake Morrison came in on Tuesday wanting to speak with you. He didn't have an appointment and he was dressed. He didn't look like what? Robert snapped, his face turning red. Like someone with $12 million, Amanda practically shouted. He was wearing dirty work clothes, driving an old pickup truck. He looked like, I don't know, just some farmer. How was I supposed to know? By checking, Robert thundered. By looking at his account, by using even the bare minimum of professional diligence before throwing out a client with $12 million in deposits. Amanda was shaking now. I thought he was lying. The claim was ridiculous, given how he looked. You judged a book by its cover, Robert said more calmly, though his voice still carried cold anger. And it cost us one of the biggest clients we've ever had. Do you have any idea how much we just lost in fees, interest revenue, and future lending opportunities, not to mention the reputational damage when this gets out? I can fix it, Amanda said quickly. I'll call Mr. Morrison. I'll apologize. You're leaving the office, Robert interrupted. Now, go home. You're suspended while we decide next steps. Suspended? For how long? That depends on how bad this fiasco becomes, Robert said. Now go, and don't talk to anyone about this. Amanda grabbed her purse with trembling hands and left the bank, feeling the stares of co-workers who had clearly heard at least part of her meeting with Robert. The walk of shame to her car felt longer than any walk she had ever taken in her life. Meanwhile, Jake was at his farm. He had just checked the balance of his new Texas Premier account and confirmed that the transfer had processed successfully when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Hello? Mr. Morrison, this is Robert Hendricks, Senior Manager at First National Bank. I hope this is a good time. It's as good a time as any, Jake replied, keeping his voice neutral. Excellent. Mr. Morrison, I've just seen that you transferred your funds out of your account with us. I hope there wasn't an issue with our service. If there's anything we can do to earn back your business. No, Jake said simply. There isn't. I understand there may have been a misunderstanding when you visited our branch on Tuesday, Robert said carefully. And I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience. The assistant manager involved has been disciplined, and I can assure you nothing like that will happen again. I appreciate that, Jake said, but the decision is made. I found a banking partner better suited to my needs. Mr. Morrison, please reconsider, Robert pleaded now. We've had a relationship with your family for years. Your father banked with us. That history must count for something. It did, Jake agreed. Until it didn't, until I learned that respect at your institution is based on appearances, not character or long-term relationships. That's not fair. Was it fair when your assistant manager told me I looked like a vagrant? Jake asked, his voice still calm but edged now. Was it fair when she told me I should go to a credit union because First National was for serious clients? Was it fair when she humiliated me in front of a full lobby because she judged my worth by dirty jeans? Silence on the other end. That's what I thought, Jake said. The decision stands, Mr. Hendricks. Good luck. He hung up. He felt some satisfaction from the call, but not as much as he had expected. Revenge, he discovered, wasn't as sweet as he had imagined, especially since it didn't undo the humiliation he had felt. It didn't change the fact that Amanda had judged him and found him worthless based purely on appearances, but it was something. In the weeks that followed, the full consequences of Amanda's mistake unfolded in Windridge. First, Amanda was formally fired from First National. Robert tried to argue for a suspension or demotion, but when the regional manager heard the full story, including the part where Amanda laughed and called Jake's claim ridiculous in front of customers, the decision was immediate. She created a PR nightmare, the regional manager explained. We can't have that. Second, the story spread completely through the town, now with all the details. And this time, there was no ambiguity. Jake really had the 12 million, Amanda really had thrown him out for judging him by appearances, and First National really had lost a massive client because of it. The town was divided in its reactions. Some felt sorry for Amanda. It was an honest mistake, they said. How could she have known? But most, especially people who worked with their hands and sweated for a living, saw it differently. She was always snobby, was a common comment. Always thought she was better than the rest of us. It finally came back to bite her. Third, Amanda quickly discovered how hard it was to find a similar job in the small area banking industry. When hiring managers checked references, they heard Robert's version of what had happened, and no one wanted to hire someone who had cost her previous employer millions in lost business through poor judgment. She eventually had to take a customer service job at a call center, working from home, earning half of what she made at the bank, and she hated every minute of it. As for Jake, he went on with his life. Michael's investments performed well. The family trusts were funded and established. He bought an additional 100 hectares of land from a retiring farmer. He expanded the pecan orchard. He hired 2 full-time employees, easing some of the pressure on himself. And slowly, he allowed himself to relax a little, to enjoy the success he had worked so brutally hard to achieve. But he still drove the same old pickup truck, still wore worn work clothes, still woke up at 5 in the morning, because that was who he was, and no amount of money was going to change that. 6 months after the bank incident, Jake was at the local feed store buying supplies when Amanda walked in. She saw him immediately and froze. For a moment, it looked like she might turn around and leave. Then she squared her shoulders and approached. "Jake," she said quietly, "may I talk to you for a minute?" Jake looked at her. She looked different, thinner, more tired, less polished. The arrogant confidence was completely gone. "Sure," he said. They stepped outside and stood near his truck. "I want to apologize," Amanda said, the words clearly costing her a great deal. "For what I said, how I treated you. It was wrong. It was awful. And I have no excuse other than that I was judgmental and prejudiced." "I appreciate that," Jake said. And he did. But it didn't change the past. "I lost my job," Amanda continued. "I lost my reputation. No one in the industry will hire me. I'm working at a call center now, making $13 an hour, and honestly, I don't even know if I can pay rent next month." She looked at him with eyes that pleaded for understanding, maybe even pity. "I know I deserved it. I know I brought this on myself, but it was devastating. My whole life collapsed because of one stupid moment of judgment." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You're right. You brought it on yourself. And it was more than a moment. It was a pattern of behavior, judging people, treating people you thought were beneath you with contempt. I was just the person whose situation finally made that attitude cost something. I know, Amanda whispered, and I've changed. I really have. Working at a call center, talking to people who are rude and condescending to me every day. I understand now. I understand what it feels like to be on the other side. Good, Jake said. Then maybe something good came out of it after all. Jake, Amanda said hesitantly, I'm not asking for my job back or anything like that. But I was hoping maybe you could, I don't know, write some kind of letter saying you forgive me. It might help when I apply for jobs, if potential employers see that I made amends with the person I hurt. Jake considered it. Part of him wanted to say no, to let her deal fully with the consequences of her actions. But another part of him, the part raised by Margaret Morrison, who had always taught him that forgiveness was stronger than revenge, hesitated. I'll think about it, he said finally. I won't promise anything, but I'll think about it. Thank you, Amanda said, sounding genuinely grateful even for the consideration. It's more than I deserve. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said, you were right. About everything, about who I was, about how appearances don't define someone's worth, about all of it. And I'm sorry it took this for me to learn that. After she left, Jake stood there for a long time, thinking. That night, he talked about it with his mother over dinner. Do you think I should help her, he asked. Write a letter or something, Margaret thought while she ate. Do you want to help her? I don't know, Jake admitted. Part of me feels like she deserves to struggle. She was cruel, arrogant. Why should I make her life easier? You don't have to, Margaret agreed. But the question isn't what she deserves. The question is what kind of person you want to be. Jake looked at his mother. What do you mean? I mean, Margaret explained, you can be someone who holds on to resentment, who takes satisfaction in watching people who hurt you suffer. Or you can be someone who offers grace even when it isn't deserved. Both are valid choices. But you have to decide which one represents who you are. Jake thought about that. Do you think she's really changed? He asked. Or just sorry she got caught? I don't know, Margaret said honestly. Only she knows that. But here's the thing about grace, son. It's not about whether the other person deserves it. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger, about choosing kindness even when it's hard, about being better than those who hurt you. Jake ate in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, I'll write the letter, not because she deserves it, but because you're right about the kind of person I want to be. A week later, Jake emailed Amanda with the letter attached. It was brief but clear. To whom it may concern, Amanda Peterson made an error in judgment in her interactions with me that resulted in serious professional consequences for her. However, she has since approached me with a genuine apology and demonstrated that she has learned from the experience. I believe in second chances and in people's capacity to grow from their mistakes. While I cannot speak to her professional qualifications, I can say that she has taken responsibility for her actions and shown real humility in the face of the consequences. Jake Morrison. It wasn't a glowing endorsement, but it was something. It was a path back, if she was willing to work for it. Amanda replied with only 2 words. Thank you. Sincerely. And that was Jake's last interaction with Amanda Peterson. Later, through small-town grapevine, Jake learned that she eventually found a job in the HR department of a manufacturing company in a neighboring town. Not banking, not a position of power, but honest work with a decent salary. He also heard that she was different now, kinder, more humble, more willing to treat everyone with respect regardless of their position. Maybe it was true. Maybe it was just performance. Jake would never know for sure. but he hoped it was true. 2 years after the bank incident, Jake was attending a farmers' event, a conference on sustainable agricultural practices, when he was approached by a young man, maybe 22 or 23. "Are you Jake Morrison?" the young man asked. "I am," Jake replied. "Can I help you?" I just wanted to say thank you," the young man said. "My name is David. My mother is Amanda Peterson. I know what happened 2 years ago, how she treated you, and how you later wrote the letter that helped her get a new job." "Oh," Jake said, not expecting that. "That's okay." "No, it's more than okay," David insisted. "My mother was in a really bad place after she lost her job, depressed, bitter, blaming everyone except herself. I was worried she wouldn't come back from it. But your letter didn't just help her find work. It showed her that forgiveness was possible, that she wasn't permanently condemned, and it changed something in her. She's a better person now, truly better, and that's partly because you chose to show mercy when you were completely justified in refusing." Jake felt something tighten in his chest. "I'm glad it worked out for her," he said sincerely. "I hope it keeps working." After David walked away, Jake thought about the entire saga, the initial humiliation, the anger he felt, the revenge he demanded, and finally the mercy he chose. And he realized his mother had been right. Offering grace was never really about Amanda. It was about him, about the kind of man he wanted to be, about choosing kindness even when it was hard. And that choice, he discovered, came with its own reward. Not a material reward, though life was going well on that front too, but an internal one, the peace that comes from knowing you acted with integrity, the quiet satisfaction of having been better than the moment required. He still drove the same old pickup truck, still wore muddy boots, still looked like any other farmer in the county, and occasionally he still received judgmental looks from people who assumed appearances told the full story. But he no longer cared, because he knew something those judges didn't. Value doesn't come from outward appearances. It comes from who you are when no one is watching, from the choices you make when things are hard, from staying true to your values even when the world pressures you to change. Jake Morrison learned that lesson the hard way at 24 years old, and he would never, ever forget it.